Welcome back to the T-Town Sports League Show. Our second edition will be recapping the action in Week 6, looking at our current Week 7 matchups and going over more stats, highlights, and news from our commissioner. Eggs and Bakey would like to stress to everyone to play an honest game against the computer. If you get a loss, don't turn everything off so you get to play again. Take your loss like a man and move on to the next week. Cheating the computer is lame. GSR 2009 spanked the Ravens 24-13 with his Vikings. Another pass-heavy game had Brett Favre throwing for 228 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. The Vikings D picked the Baltimore second-string quarterback twice, who was filling in for an injured Joe Flacco, who was out for 5 weeks with a broken collarbone. Adrian Peterson had an off game with a season worst of 44 rushing yards and -2 passing yards, yet he still scored 2 touchdowns. Michael Crabtree gets the MVP with 10 receptions and 152 receiving yards. Prone Cobra and the Steelers defense came up strong, sacking Brady Quinn 3 times and picking him off once. The Browns went for it on 4th down twice, with no success from the stingy Steelers D. Ben Roethlisberger takes the MVP with 117 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and completing 79% of his passes. New York Giants visited New Orleans and ran the ball straight through Bourbon Street, collecting beads and the win along the way. Bobby B beat the Saints 21-16 on the ground with 126 rushing yards. Drew Brees and the Saints lit it up in the air the short time they had the ball, but the Giants managed to pick them off once. Eli Manning only threw the ball 5 times, completing 100% of his passes, but with the Giants controlling the clock and making the first down on the ground, there was no reason to air it out. Brandon Jacobs runs with the MVP with 78 yards on the ground, 31 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns on the ground. Big Chipper's Eagles swooped up the win against the Raiders 27-14. The Eagles defense stood tall again this week with 2 interceptions and 2 sacks, as well as stopping the Raiders' running game to a pathetic 21 yards total. Westbrook claws his way to the MVP with 138 yards rushing, 1 rushing touchdown, and 21 receiving yards. Hands of Salt and the Tennessee Titans visited the New England Patriots and came out with a big win on the ground. The Pats defense stamped out 1 sack, 1 interception, and a forced fumble, but it wasn't enough for Chris Johnson and the Titans' fat running game. CJ churns the MVP in with 5 receiving yards, 116 rushing yards, and 2 touchdowns on the ground. Avarice 54 and the Bears went to Atlanta to stomp on the Falcons 24-14. The rushing game was big for both teams, the Bears running up 103 yards and a touchdown, while the Falcons marched 118 yards and a touchdown. The game was pretty close in the air as well, but the Bears came out ahead by 10. Left end Anwale and Gunlie picks up the MVP with a forced fumble, 2 sacks, and 3 tackles. Broncos came to sunny southern San Diego and got shocked and rocked by Goldman Sachs 420's Chargers. Marcus Jones-Drew rushed up for 96 yards and got 11 receiving yards. The Chargers defense wreaked havoc on the Little Ponies by forcing 2 fumbles, picking Chris Sims twice and sacking him 2 times as well, not to mention keeping the running game down to a paltry 10 yards. Philip Rivers electrified the game and lights it up with the MVP with 200 passing yards and throwing for 4 touchdowns. And now for our game of the week. A battle of the birds from the NFC West Conference. Eggs and Bakey with the Seahawks against Jay Tonic 77 with the Cardinals. It was an offensively heavy game with the Cards putting up 331 yards and the Seahawks with 193. Ronnie Brown busted up the Cards with a 49-yard rush, but Beanie Wells gets the MVP nod for 120 receiving yards, 1 touchdown in the air, 50 yards on the ground. Jay Tonic gets the win 28-7. These 2 rivals will meet up again in Week 10. As you already know, last week was the trade deadline for our franchises designated by our commissioner. There were a ton of trades, but there was one that stood out from the rest.
Bad trade of the week.
Ziggy 17 with the Colts traded halfback Donald Brown and wide receivers Ike Hilliard and Anthony Gonzalez to the Patriots for Wes Welker. Now, from first glance, this may not seem like such a bad trade. After all, Wes Welker is ranked to 91 overall, but he's on the injury list for 6 more weeks. Wes Welker should be back in action in Week 13, which is just in time for Ziggy's rematch with Hands of Salt and the Titans. Since the last game between them was so close, I'm sure the rematch will prove to be another sweet game. Week 7's game of the week is between Prone Cobra's 5-1 Steelers and GSR 2009's undefeated Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings are on top of the offensive statistic, with Brett Favre being one of the elite quarterbacks in the league and Adrian Peterson is the number 2 league rusher. This will also be GSR's first non-computer matchup. I'm sure the human element will be a huge factor in the outcome of this game. It should be a very competitive matchup. That's it for another week of the T-Town League Sports Show. I hope you enjoyed the second edition, and we will be back for more action in Week 8. This is Prone Cobra and the Steeler Nation clicking out.
Cookie Monster! Cookie Monster! Cookie!
Prone Cobra and the Steelers defense came up small.
Give me cookie!
The Eagles defense stood tall again this week with 2 interceptions and 2 sacks, as well as stopping Raiders running game.
Cookie Monster!
Football point card. And if you lose, don't fall fat. Just keep on doing it.
Cookie, 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 cookie!
Yeah, don't quit. If you quit,
Cookie, cookie!
you're gonna be out of the football team. You can get fired.
Cookie, 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 cookie! Cookie!
Big Chipper's Eagles swooped up the win against the Raiders 17.
Cookie Monster!
The Eagles defense stood tall again. Ooh.
Cookie Monster! Give me cookie!
If you try your best and don't quit, you'll still be in the team, maybe.
Cookie Monster! Give me cookie!
And make sure that football team is on the PS
Cookie!
free.
Cookie! 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 Cookie!
Now, from first class,
Cookie! 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 Cookie!
And don't cheat, or you'll be out of the team if you cheat.
5 cookies!
I think it's Cheeto time!
Cookie Monster! Cookie! Cookie Monster! Give me cookie! Cookie Monster! Give me cookie! Cookie!
So make sure you don't quit and try your best.